What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Inside Inter Miami, the Miami Herald show about all things Inter Miami. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor, joined as always by Michelle Kaufman, our Inter Miami beat writer. We're sipping a little bit of this again this week because guess what, everybody? Supporter Shield has been secured. So, as Michelle is doing right now, which I will in a minute after I stop talking, we're sipping some mate again in honor of another big milestone for Inter Miami that we'll talk about in depth on this show. We'll talk about how they did it. A 3-2 thrilling victory over those Columbus Crew, the defending MLS champions. Huge save on a PK by Drake Callender to clinch it late. We'll dive into all of that, see what Tata Martino had to say both about the performance and how his younger players have stepped up this season. Then Inter Miami turns right around, sits a bunch of their superstars, including Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, and beats Toronto thanks to Leo Campana, a late goal there. So one more point to go to break the MLS scoring record. We'll talk about that as well now as we enter the FIFA break, where Messi and others are off playing with their national teams. Michelle had a very nice story on Sergey Krivtsov on how he's been dealing with the war in Ukraine and the effect it's had on him and his family. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And also, does Tata Martino deserve Coach of the Year recognition? I mean, with the job he's done. I know obviously a talent-laden team, but he's done a good job moving the pieces around. And then a little bit of news on the Club World Cup. Looks like Inter Miami might have a shot to get in now that they are the owners of the Supporters Shield. And we'll look ahead at the World Cup 2026 and why Hard Rock Stadium has to change its name. So a lot to cover on this show. But Michelle, I'm going to sip while you talk about that 3-2 win last week.
Oh my goodness. That game, I mean, to be honest, I don't see how the MLS Cup final is going to be any better than that. I mean, that match felt like a final. It felt like a championship game that just, we knew it would. Everyone knew going in, this was the most anticipated regular season game. These were the two, you would say arguably the two best teams in the league. Tata has been going on and on all year about how Columbus Crew is the best team, and now they're going up against them on the road with the supporter shield on the line. If they win the game, they secure the supporter shield. I mean, there was so much at stake, and the owners went up. Not David Beckham, but the Moss brothers flew up for that game to Columbus. They wanted to be there for this moment, and the moment happened. But wow, was that game dramatic? That was just an unbelievable game, unbelievable energy, two great teams, two very good coaches, a chess match between the coaches. And it was a stalemate for 45 minutes, pretty much. It was a stalemate. It was scoreless, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And then Leo Messi works his magic. Two
Mm-hmm.
goals in 5 minutes. Two goals in 5 minutes. The first one, just again, one of those goals that you say, who else would have scored that goal the way he did? He took a really long pass from Jordi Alba, who, of course, had it right on the money because that's how they are. It's like they have telepathy. A very long ball from Jordi Alba. He gets it from behind, almost like if you're in the NFL and you're catching, receiver catching over the shoulder. He gets a pass pretty much over the shoulder, chests it down, and then just drills it with his left foot into the left back corner where the goalkeeper just, there was nothing he could do.
No, nothing.
He just stood there, and they showed his face afterward, and it was just like his
Yeah,
face
what do you
was like
expect?
nothing,
Right?
nothing I could do, nothing I
I
could do.
know.
And
Left them.
then 5 minutes later, in extra time, he gets a PK. Luis Suarez goes down in the box. Or right outside, gets a free kick, not PK, gets a free kick. And again, just a spectacular curling free kick on the left side. Once again, the keeper, nothing he could do. It was
Yeah.
really not the keeper's fault. And then next thing you know, Miami's on their way. It
The
was it was
shock.
unbelievable.
Yeah, the shock value of hitting you twice in stoppage time right before the half that way. I mean, that was huge.
It was right before the half. I mean, the game was even, and then all of a sudden, two goals in
Yeah.
5 minutes from Messi just before the halftime whistle. Miami gets the momentum. Everything changed. And then second half, of course, it was almost like it was last time. The last time they played,
Yep.
Inter Miami was up 2-0. And
And here
Columbus
comes the crew.
3 goals. They scored 3 in the previous time they played. Columbus scored 3 unanswered goals late in the second half and won the game 3-2. This time Miami was able to hang on. They did score 2 again and looked like they were going to score 3. Miami had 2 handballs in the box. How does that happen? 2 handballs in the box, and they get PKs. The first one they score on. The second one, this is going to be a massive, massive point if they get this goal. And Drake Callender comes up with a
Huge.
huge save to save the day, to keep them ahead 3-2, and they win the game 3-2. I mean, the celebration
Yeah.
after, there's videos that, I had it embedded in my story, just incredible celebrations in the locker room. Jorge Mas held up the big plate, brings it into the locker room, and they start spraying champagne all over it and champagne all over the place. They all posed with it. They were like, I mean, it really did look like they won the championship, the way they were celebrating. All the players posed with the trophy. They posed together. They posed in groups. They were jumping around, singing and dancing. And I mean, it looked like they had just won the league championship, which in most leagues around the world, it is, right?
In most leagues around the world, that's the thing. In the Premier League, for example, it's who's number one on the standings at the end. It was at the top of the table, like they say. So, but in this case, there are playoffs in America and the MLS. They do playoffs, so that's the real one. That's always the one up for grabs. One thing, Luis Suarez, let's mention, heads up goal, the one that ended up being the game winner, taking advantage of a gaffe by the Columbus goalie, and that header. That's hard to do from all the way outside the box the way he did. Yes, exactly. That deserves a couple sips.
That deserves some sips for El Pistolero with his platinum blonde hair. By the way, with his platinum blonde hair, he had the presence of mind. This is something because of his experience. This guy has seen it all. He's 37. He's seen it all. He's been in every type of scoring situation probably that exists. And the goalkeeper and one of their players collide, fall down, and without even blinking, any other player, I'm sorry, but almost any other player, that would happen, and a player would be, oh, the ball's the goalie's down. What am I going to do? No, he, without even thinking, jumps up and heads that ball from a distance. It was not up close. It was pretty far out. Heads the ball over the keeper and over the defender, right into the net. It was a very smart heads up play with his head. It just showed the experience. Those two guys, when push comes to shove, those two guys are unbelievable. They have combined for 35 goals and 22 assists. 35 goals and 22 assists. They haven't even played all the games. They were missing for national team duty. Messi missed a ton for his injuries and national team duty, and yet they are just remarkable. The two of them really are remarkable. And what they did in that game, plus Drake, the unheralded hero that I always feel does not get enough attention, but he made a massive save there to get that, to preserve that point that they needed, those 3 points to get the supporter shield. So now they're on top of the table. They finish on top of the table no matter what, but that doesn't mean that they're MLS Cup champions. Not yet.
Right. That's the champagne celebration you want later on. But we'll talk about a little more about that. And of course, like you mentioned, Suarez and Messi and the MVP race and where they stand and all of that. But first, let's see what Tata Martino had to say about clinching that supporter shield.
Bueno, ahora tenemos argumentos futbolísticos y de resultado como para poder pensar que hemos escalado algún peldaño más. De todas maneras, no soy de los que estrictamente corren detrás de los resultados, y la actuación de Columbo esta noche refleja un poco la calidad de este equipo. Y nosotros estamos en un periodo de construir algo semejante, porque lo de Columbus no es de ahora, de jugar este partido, es de ganar la liga pasada, de ganar la League Cup, de jugar la final el otro día con el América. Entonces, cuando esto tiene continuidad, uno puede hablar de los méritos de un equipo. Nosotros estamos en proceso de crear, sí creo una franquicia que piense más en ganar que perder, y para mí esto es un tema también esencial y que se ha modificado en poco tiempo. Nosotros con el de hoy hemos llegado a 20 triunfos en la liga, y por ahí esto en otro momento era impensado. Entonces, poder cambiar esa dinámica para nosotros también es importante.
So yeah, Tata's saying there, I asked him that question actually about, you've always said, Tata, that Columbus Crew is the benchmark for this league, is the best team. Where do you think now that you guys stand? And he's still cautious. Cautious. He still says, well, we are building. We have proven now, yes, by winning the Supporter Shield, by getting 20 victories, something that would have been unthinkable in the past for this team. We are building, and we have, basically put another building block on what we're trying to build and what we're trying to do with this franchise. But what we need and what Columbus has is continuity. He said, this isn't just, we've done this in one game, one season. Columbus Crew is the defending champion. They won, they were CONCACAF Champions Cup. They did better. They also just won Leagues Cup. This is a team that continually is fighting for titles. And that is what we are trying to build. So he was saying, this is great. This is wonderful. We're not there yet. And that's what really good coaches do. While everyone else is celebrating with the champagne and all that stuff, we asked him, how did he celebrate? How did he celebrate personally winning the Supporter Shield a couple days later? And he said, I allowed myself to drink 2 beers. That's just a very typical coach. He was not jumping around in the champagne. He allowed himself to drink 2 beers, but he did say, yes, we are building, and we have built something, much better than what we were before, but we're still building. And one of the things he did talk about too is that it isn't that the reason that they won the Supporter Shield is not just the superstars. It's not just Messi, Busquets, Suarez, and Alba. It's the young players. It's all the guys who stepped up when those guys were out, when they were injured, when they were out for national team duty. Let's see what Tata has to say about a couple of the young players, Ian Frey and Yannick Bright in particular.
Bueno, Jan es un chico, desde mi punto de vista, muy, muy, muy confiable, con mucha jerarquía, con confianza en sí mismo, que puede jugar en diferentes puestos de la defensa. Eh, no quiero ser apresurarme en el concepto, pero es algo que pienso. Yo creo que Jan es jugador, potencialmente un jugador de selección para Estados Unidos. De todas maneras, creo que hoy, además de Leo, con los 2 goles que hizo, el jugador brillante que tuvo el equipo fue Yannick Bright. Bueno, valga la redundancia, el jugador brillante fue Yannick Bright.
High praise.
There's Messi showing that he speaks a little bit of English, because he made a little play on words with Yannick Bright being the brightest, best player other than Messi he felt on the field that day against Columbus. He said that Yannick Bright to him was the best player other than Messi on the field. And then as far as Ian Frey, he went so far as to say, he said, I don't want to presume, but in my opinion, Ian Frey is a player who could be on the U.S. national team one day. He thinks he's that good, that he has the confidence. He's a player who's versatile, who can play a lot of positions. And he said, this is a guy who's extremely confident, good on the ball, can play different positions. And in his estimation, he's a guy who one day could be on the U.S. national team. So, we've talked about it, Andres, as this team is being built, that yes, they've got the stars, but they also have the foundation with some of these young players to be good for the next few years.
Yeah. And you saw some of that in the next game against Toronto, because, no Messi, no Boosie, no Suarez, no Jordi, no Calendar, which you kind of figured. Good chance to rest all those guys now that they've locked things up. Still going after that points record, but we know that's not like one of the primary, most important thing was getting that home field advantage. Leo Campana helping the cause, 94th minute goal. They get the 1-0 win at Toronto. and now only one game left against New England to potentially break that points record. But like I said, the home field, the biggest thing. Let's hear what Tata had to say about how important that part is.
No, we're hearing what Ian Frey had to say.
Oh, Ian Frey, I'm sorry.
The having home field advantage is amazing, especially with our fans. It's perfect. It's a perfect situation for us, and we got the first place, so we're gonna get the home field advantage. And especially for me, I grew up 15 minutes from the stadium. I grew up there since I was a kid, so this is perfect situation.
Yeah, Ian Frey grew up in Coconut Creek. He's one of these academy kids. He's a local kid, grew up in Coconut Creek, South Florida guy, homegrown talent, joins the academy as a teenager, moves up to the second team, moves up to the first team. So, he's a guy that Tata really Tata loves Ian Frey. He also loves Noah Allen, Kremaski. These are guys who have come up through the academy. They are the building blocks for the future. And as Ian Frey said, the next game, having home field advantage, they're going to have to play the game against New England, the season finale. And then they're opening, for you guys want to mark your calendars, Miami opens the playoffs on Friday night, October 25th at 8:30 p.m. October 25th, Friday night, at home. And the opponent will be the winner of the wild card game, the Eastern Conference wild card game. There are several teams still battling for that position. Montreal, DC, Atlanta, several teams are still in the running for those last two spots. So those last two place finishers in the East Coast in the Eastern Conference will battle for the right to play Inter Miami on October 25th at 8:30 p.m. at home. That'll kick off. The first round of the playoffs is best of 3. So they will play the first game at home, the second game on the road, and then if necessary, if a third game is necessary, it would be back at home. And then after that, if they advance, every other game will be at home for Inter Miami. It's a huge advantage.
And it becomes single elimination, if I'm not mistaken, after that, which gets the stakes get crazier after that for sure.
Yes, after that, it's one and done. One and done. If you advance, win or go home. So the fact that they're playing all of those rounds will be at home is a huge, huge advantage for this team. Every game will be at Chase Stadium, except the second game of the first round.
So now, as we know, they're heading into the FIFA break this week. Messi with Argentina, the Argentine team training at Inter Miami as they get ready for those matches. Diego Gomez
in the middle of a hurricane, hurricane warnings. I'm sure that's not what they planned. I have a feeling that they thought they're going to come here, get a little beach time in, work out for the World Cup qualifiers. They brought the whole team here because their next game is in Venezuela, and on the 10th on Thursday. So they're playing Venezuela on Thursday, and then on the 15th they're playing in Buenos Aires. Leo Messi is on the team. I'm sure everybody is praying that he does not get injured, that he comes back healthy, because this is the most critical time of the season for Inter Miami. And Luis Suarez is not on the national team. He retired, nor will he ever be, with the words that he, with the criticism that he gave of Bielsa, their Uruguay national coach. He came out last week and blasted, and I mean, did not mince any words about the team culture under coach Marcelo Bielsa. He just ripped, said that the team is in disarray, that the team is divided, that, he didn't let the starters were practicing separate from the backups, that he didn't let anyone on the staff interact with the players, that he didn't want the players to interact with fans. I mean, he was just ripping the culture under Bielsa. So he retired from the national team and then left some words, some pretty harsh, critical words of their coach. But anyway, he will be around. We don't have to worry about him getting injured. But Messi is on national team duty. Diego Gomez is with Paraguay. And Campana, I'm very happy for Leo Campana. He was called up to the Ecuadorian national team. He deserves it. This guy has been playing really well of late. Like we've said before, he's had to wait his turn, first behind Higuain, then behind Joseph Martinez, now behind Luis Suarez. He's a number 9 who only gets to play when the star number 9 is resting. So I'm very happy for him. He's a good very nice young man. And he is with the Ecuadorian national team for the 2 upcoming World Cup qualifiers. And Benja Kremaski was called up for the U.S. under-20 team. So 5 guys 5 guys are with the national teams right now. This week, Inter Miami has no game. They're on break, and they are just preparing for the final season finale, and then the playoffs.
When we talk about adversity, Michelle, sometimes sports adversity is one thing, but what Sergey Krivtsov has faced, with his mind on the war in Ukraine, with his family, talk a little bit about that. You did a nice story on him the other day that you could find at MiamiHerald.com if you haven't read it already on Sergey Krivtsov. What was that like?
Yeah, I like to try to do. I know that we focus so much on Messi. Everyone does. Everyone in the media focuses a lot on Messi. The fans focus on Messi. Obviously, MLS just announced that they crossed 11 million fans for the first time. And I did another story that you can also find on MiamiHerald.com. Another shameless promotion here.
They're all on
But,
that site.
yes. So read everything on MiamiHerald.com.
Or you could Google it.
Many stories.
Just Google.
You can just Google these
Michelle's
stories
name
and you
and
will
Inter
find.
Miami.
Google Michelle Kaufman, Inter Miami. You'll find all my work. Anyway, but yeah, we focus on Messi, who's the reason that they broke the 11 million mark. I mean, all the games that they played had 50,000 fans, 60,000 fans, 70,000 fans on the road. That only happens when Messi plays. But I always want to try to write about the other players on the team as well. Like I did the profile on Drake Callender, some of the young players I've written about. And I decided this week to write about Sergey Krivtsov because he's a guy who's, overlooked. He kind of lost his starting position. But when you look at what that young man is, well, not as young anymore, 33, but young in my book, what he is going through, he is trying to focus on his job here and playing soccer while his family is in Ukraine. He lost a cousin, a young man who was in the army, in the Ukrainian army, fighting for his country. He was killed in combat. Sergey's family, his parents and his sister, live about 25 miles from the front line of the war against Russia. Since the invasion he has, his life has been in turmoil. He had to leave. He left Ukraine, the team that he was on, Shakhtar, a team that he had played for 13 years. That's where all his friends were. That's the team he had played on, one of the top teams in Ukraine. Picked up everything for the safety of his wife and his 3 young children and moved to the United States to play for Inter Miami. And he said that, during the time that he's on the field, it's a chance for him to escape for a couple of hours what's going on in his country, but the rest of the time his mind is over there. And he said that every morning when he wakes up, his morning ritual is he wakes up and the first thing he does is he goes on his laptop and he looks at the news of what happened while he was sleeping in the war over there. And there have been some very scary moments, and bombs. Just the week before I wrote this story and did the interview with him, there had been a bombing in the hometown where his parents are and where his sister is, and people were killed in that attack. And he wakes up every morning afraid to turn on the laptop and see what's going on. So he was very, very open. His English has gotten remarkably good since he arrived here in early 23. He said that he's taking English and Spanish classes, which I found really interesting. He said he needs to communicate with all of the Hispanic teammates on the team, as well as the few who speak English on this team. So he's taking classes online with the Ukrainian language professor. He takes it twice a week. He does 45 minutes English and 45 minutes in Spanish. So his language skills are really remarkable. Again, he's doing all this while his mind is on the war in Ukraine. So if you haven't had a chance, it is a human interest story that I thought was important to tell. A guy who's not getting headlines, but is, very, very strong and remarkable in his own way.
Well, the language part, we're not used to this because in our, here in the US, it feels like it's not as much, but in Europe, you learn multiple languages in school because, the neighboring countries are so close to each other. And like the kids know how to speak, French, Italian, English, Spanish, a lot of times, so I mean, it's something you kind of grow up with. So it's not surprising to see that he is handling all this and learning so quickly and adapting so quickly. So good for him. And yeah, I mean, trying time for sure that I can't imagine what it's like, sometimes we take for granted. We wake up and sometimes we're nervous about checking a website over something silly and like fantasy football or something stupid. Imagine a real life that affects your family every morning, being in suspense, not knowing what the heck happened from the night before. I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. And he's really a very nice guy. And again, his English, when he first got here, he could just barely put a few words together. And in this interview, it was remarkable to me how well he was able to articulate in an emotional way and articulate what he's going through in English, which is not his first language. So again, thumbs up to Sergey Krivtsov and praying for peace there and everywhere else.
Absolutely. We're hoping for the best for him and everyone that's dealing with that situation in Ukraine, of course. Let's switch gears now and finish the show with a couple of with three actually quick topics. We could probably say it's 4 topics. Let's start with Tata Martino, nominated for MLS Coach of the Year. Should he get it, Michelle, after he's been the chess master, moving everything around, balancing schedules and injuries and out of national tournament times, things of that nature?
Yeah, I think, I know that he says that his vote is for Wilfred Nancy, and Wilfred Nancy is also very deserving. I mean, this Columbus Crew coach, the argument really here is going to be, I think, between those two, I believe, between those two. Do you vote for the guy who has won all of these titles without quote unquote, star players, which is what Wilfred Nancy has done? That takes a really good amount of coaching. On the other hand, when you look at what Tata's done, yes, he has these incredible players, 4 guys who played for Barcelona, but you can't just throw them onto the field. And he's had to play a lot of the season without them. I mean, Messi's missed, 15, 16 games, league games, 20 games, I think overall. He has not been around for a lot of the games. And Suarez was also gone. Other guys are gone for national team duty. Other guys were injured. I think that it's difficult to also manage egos, to be able to put together a locker room where you've got these superstars and then these teenagers, and they are meshing so much as a team. And to me, I covered the NBA. I covered the Detroit Pistons way back in the day of the Bad Boys, and Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer and those teams back then, Dennis Rodman. And, their coach, Chuck Daly, they had a lot of stars on that team, but you have to be able to manage the stars, and you have to be able to manage all those egos and the minutes, and to convince them not to play when you think they need a rest and they want to play, which that Tata had to do. There were games that Messi wanted to play injured, and I'm sure Tata persuaded him not to. And then for the young guys to mesh with the older guys. These are all things that happen behind the scenes, in a locker room, in practices, in meeting rooms, that none of us see. In my opinion, I think Tata should get Coach of the Year. They've gone from last place team when he arrived to first place team right now in the span of a year and a half. I think he's very deserving. I think Wilfred Nancy is also deserving. I think it'll be a close race for that title. But I think that I would vote for Tata. Who would you vote for?
I think it's interesting how you look at it, and I wonder how the voters will react, because yes, Tata's got the superstars and all that. He does make a good case for Nancy with the less, notoriety, the less fame, the less legendary players you could say on his roster and that sort of thing. It's hard.
On the other
it's a hard one.
On the other hand, Abed.
Let's think about that.
Abed, on the other hand,
let's review.
On the other hand, yes, Wilfred Nancy has done it with players who are not as well known. However, he has had basically the same lineup for a lot of the games, much more continuity in the lineup than Tata has had. Tata has had a million different lineups. If you go through, and I will do this research before our next podcast, how many different lineups has Inter Miami used versus how many different lineups has Columbus Crew used? That, I think that putting all those pieces together week after week with different lineups, different formations, I think he gets the edge. But I know a lot of other people will disagree and say that Wilfred Nancy deserves it. I'm not saying he's not deserving. I think he's equally deserving. Maybe they'll tie and they could both get it. The other question is, when we're talking about season awards, end of season awards, Luis Suarez and Messi are both nominated for MVP, along with a lot of other players. Do you think that either one of those two deserve MVP of the league? Go ahead. What do you think?
I will. Before that, when we were still talking coaches, I was going to say, cool that you brought up Chuck Daly. Imagine dealing with lame beer in those days. How crazy that must have been.
Oh my God, I was there. I saw
the bad boys. Yep. Anyway, I might have the unpopular opinion because Messi's missed a lot of time this year, and Suarez held the fort while he was away with a lot of valuable plays. And even now, that header the other day wins that game.
That was a winning goal. That was a winning goal.
That game.
I would say you could argue that Suarez is the MVP of the team over Messi. You could say that Suarez is also up for newcomer of the year for the league. I think that's hands down. I don't know anyone else who's in their first year in the league who's having the year that he's having. Right. So I would definitely vote for Suarez for newcomer of the year. That one is not even, to me, a race. But MVP of the team, MVP of the team, you could say Suarez, although Messi also has a lot of assists. He does have a lot of assists on the other people's goals, but he missed a lot of time. Suarez, who came in with the knees that everybody thought he was limping around and looked like he was 80 years old, he came in and he has been healthy. He has not missed games for injury. We'll knock on wood here. He has not missed games for injury. We're going to lift a mate cup to him, to the pistolero, with his aging knees. He has done what he's done with aging knees, okay? So he has 18 goals. He's in third place for Golden Boot. You could say that he is the MVP of this team over Messi. Now the question is he MVP of the league, or does that go to Christian Benteke? Does it go to Buanga of LA or one of those guys? Do you think that Suarez is deserving of MVP of the whole league?
I think those other guys deserve consideration, no doubt. I just wonder if, again, the name value is going to swing this toward Messi because of the fact that the league is so about him. And you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if that's just going to overshadow everything. And no matter how good these guys have played for their respective teams, but again, I just hope that Suarez gets his due.
Yeah, you guys that are out there,
this is a poll.
Watching. This is a poll. If you're out there watching, if you're listening and you want to go on YouTube and leave a comment, let us know what you think on two questions. Who should win Coach of the Year? And tell us what you think about Suarez versus Messi for MVP of this team.
I think that
MVP
one
of the league.
Even more.
MVP of this team.
Yeah.
MVP. Who is the MVP of this team? That's what we want to know here on Inside Inter Miami. We want your votes. Go in and vote. Give us your comments in YouTube or on MiamiHerald.com. Look and see where the comments are. Type in a comment. Let us know. Should Tata get Coach of the Year? And who is your MVP of this team? Is it Suarez? Is it Messi? Or is it someone else? Is it Drake Callender? Tell us what you think.
Well, we're going to talk about why Hard Rock Stadium will have to change its name for the 2026 World Cup. But since we're on discussion topics, let's jump ahead real quick to the last one, make this one before another topic of discussion. If Inter Miami, it sounds like they're going to get that spot in the Club World Cup for winning the Supporter Shield. Is Columbus getting screwed a little bit, though?
Yes. Columbus is getting screwed. My opinion, especially if Columbus were to somehow, if Columbus wins MLS Cup. So what happens is FIFA had not announced and still has not announced as of our recording of this podcast. FIFA has not announced how the final U.S. spot is going to be determined for the Club World Cup 2025, which is being held in the United States, there's one discretionary spot that is left open, and FIFA is going to announce how that spot is going to be determined. I've said all along, being the cynic that I am, being a journalist for 37 years, I never
No.
trust anything. I'm very cynical. I'm very jaded.
No.
And I have said all along that FIFA was waiting to see if Inter Miami, look at that, I called it Messi. If Messi FC, excuse me, Inter Miami would win Supporter Shield,
That's what
then
they
all
call
of a
it.
sudden, oh, FIFA will announce, you know what, we're going to give the discretionary spot is going to go to the team that wins the Supporter Shield. Oh, gee, what a surprise. Inter Miami / Lionel Messi won the Supporter Shield. They're going to be in the Club World Cup next summer, 2025. And don't be surprised if the opening match is at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami with Messi. Okay, that's me being the cynic. Now, is that fair? Because maybe the discretionary spot should go to the team that has won the most titles in the United States in the past 2 years, which is not Inter Miami. Columbus Crew is the defending MLS champion. Columbus Crew could win it again. If they were to win MLS Cup back to back, I think, how in the world can you put another team in the FIFA Club World Cup if they are the two-time back-to-back champion? They also won Leagues Cup this year. Miami won Leagues Cup last year, 2023, but Columbus Crew won Leagues Cup this year ahead of Inter Miami. Columbus Crew went farther in the CONCACAF Champions Cup than Miami. They went to Mexico and won games in Mexico, which Inter Miami did not do. They've won all these games without 4 players who played for Barcelona. So if you are deciding which United States team deserves the discretionary spot, is it Columbus Crew or is it Inter Miami?
Columbus Crew doesn't sell Apple subscriptions, and they don't sell tickets the way a certain someone does. And I think that's what it'll come down to. I'm not just saying you're not right about the deserving part, but money talks.
Right. Now, if Miami wins MLS Cup, if
That'll
Miami
help the
were
case.
to, so they just beat Columbus Crew
That's
on the
different.
road
Right.
to win Supporter Shield.
But-
so they went head to head against Columbus and beat them on the road to win Supporter Shield. Now,
They have to
they
win the
will
cup.
probably meet again. They
Right.
will probably have to meet
Oh,
again in
more
the
than likely.
playoffs. Let's face it, they're going to meet again, whether
Yeah.
it's in the Eastern Conference semis,
The only other
finals,
team
whatever.
the only other team in the East is Cincinnati that could be in that mix and somewhere along the road.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, unless something crazy happens. So
right.
could meet again. If Miami were to beat Columbus again, back to back in do or die, really critical games, win the Supporter Shield, and then if Miami goes on to win MLS Cup and won Leagues Cup last year, and if they were to win Supporter Shield and MLS Cup this year, then I say fine,
Right.
give it to Inter Miami. That's
But if not,
if Columbus comes out ahead and
Right.
they give that spot to Inter Miami, there are going to be a lot of angry fans in Columbus for
Definitely.
sure, and deservedly so.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, before we wrap it up, tell everybody real quick that hasn't read your story. What's up? Why does Hard Rock Stadium need to change their name for the World Cup?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize, again, speaking of FIFA, for the World Cup, not Club World Cup, but for the World Cup, the rule is the actual World Cup in 2026. The FIFA rule is that you cannot use stadium names, that you can't use any stadium name that is not a FIFA sponsor. So all of these NFL stadiums around the United States, Mercedes-Benz Stadium is being called Atlanta Stadium for the World Cup. AT&T Stadium in Dallas is going to be called Dallas Stadium. Gillette Stadium in New England is going to be called Boston Stadium or New England Stadium.
Or Foxborough
and
or something.
Hard Rock Stadium is not going to be Hard Rock Stadium for the World Cup. It's going to be called Miami Stadium. And they have to cover the signage. Not only they have to cover all of these stadiums in the United States, these beautiful NFL palaces with corporate names, all of the corporate signage is required to be covered for the World Cup, and the broadcasters are not allowed to refer to the stadiums by their names during the World Cup, they're going to have to call it Miami Stadium, Atlanta Stadium, Dallas Stadium, Boston Stadium. It is, and even this is the worst one to me, is MetLife Stadium, which is where the final is going to be. MetLife Stadium is being called New York, New Jersey Stadium. How clunky is that? Here we are at New York, New Jersey Stadium for the game at New York, New Jersey Stadium. It's going to sound very awkward and very strange. The only way that sponsors can be named for stadiums is if a sponsor comes up with an enormous sponsorship to sponsor the stadium name during World Cup. Then they can use the sponsor name. Otherwise, all of the stadium names will be covered for the World Cup.
It sounds like a cheap video game that they don't want to pay the royalties and can't have the actual names of the guys in the video game. Remember when that used to happen?
Yes.
That's what it sounds like. But see, this is why money talks. This is why money talks. Well, going back to the MVP thing.
Going back
or the leagues, Club World Cup thing.
Club World Cup, again, it's Messi. You can say whatever. And Columbus has every reason to argue if they end up not getting the spot. But Messi is going to fill these stadiums. I just said before, I wrote this story about the attendance, 11 million fans. 72,000 showed up at Arrowhead Stadium, where they don't even normally play the Kansas City games there. They only moved that. They play in a 20,000 seats, 25,000 seat stadium. They moved that game to Arrowhead only because of Messi and sold 72,000 seats. 65,000 show up in Boston, 65,000 show up in Atlanta to see Messi. So if you're putting on a tournament in the United States, do you want Messi to be there, or do you want another team that doesn't have Messi?
Right.
It's the Messi effect.
The
Messi effect. Absolutely.
It's been that way since day one. From the minute he arrived. Correct. So, all right. Well, we'll be back. I think next week, if not the week after. Once Inter Miami is back in play, facing New England, that last game of the regular season before the playoffs begin. When Michelle told everybody a little while ago. But until then, we appreciate you watching. Appreciate you listening. Remember, YouTube. MiamiHerald.com, YouTube's or MiamiHerald.com. The only way you're going to see her do that or see us drink these. But if you can only listen to us and pretend and imagine what it's like, then we appreciate that too. Remember, Spotify, iTunes, all those podcatchers have us as well. But until then, for Michelle Kaufman, I'm Andre Fernandez. See everybody next time on Inside Inter Miami.